As many of you will know, the Diocese of Monmouth is focusing on our discipleship during this season of Lent. We're using an excellent study series written and collated by some of our own clergy, entitled Dying to Live, that's designed to help us reflect more deeply on certain aspects of what it means to be a disciple of Jesus Christ. As the title suggests, Christ offers us life, and life in all its fullness. But in order to embrace that life fully, we have to learn to die to ourselves, to our selfishness, greed, envy, and all those other things that get in the way of God working within us. Each week focuses on a different theme, and in this first week we're looking at lamentation. It's perhaps not the first thing we think about when considering our discipleship, but as we will all know from our own experience, life contains within it sadness as well as joy, pain and loss as well as contentment, doubts and questions as well as faith and certainty. Our discipleship doesn't render us immune from the difficulties of life. Rather, it provides us with a way of embracing them as we seek to pattern our lives on the life of Jesus. As we do so, we learn to discover that God meets us as much, if not more, in the difficulties and challenges of life as he does in its beauty and joys. We learn to discover God within these trials and trust ourselves to him as the light in the darkness. Lamentation is about expressing our sorrow and sadness. To lament is to cry out, to weep and wail at the pains and sufferings that we see around us and experience ourselves. It's not a failure of faith, but an act of faith as we cry out to God to help us in our helplessness. The Bible is full of examples of lamentation. Indeed, there's a whole book in the Old Testament entitled Lamentations, the Lamentations of Jeremiah, as he describes the desolation of Jerusalem and the taking into exile of God's chosen people. He talks of his stomach churning, his heart being wrung, and his groaning out loud as he bewails the fate of his people. This is lamentation at its most anguished and heartrending. Many of the Psalms also give expression to anger, despair, questioning, and can be powerful prayers for us to use in our sorrow and despair as we ask why these things are happening. Why, Lord? Where are you? Why don't you act? Such questions, such a crying out, has been very much part of our own lives over the past 12 months, in a way that I guess it hasn't ever been before. What's going on? Why is this happening? Books have been written trying to make sense of it all, such as the one that came through the post to me the other day, Where is God in the Pandemic? It's inevitable that we should feel this way, and right that as people of faith we take these questions to God, for taking them to God is an act of faith and trust. It's part and parcel of our human nature to try and hide from the things that we find difficult. Our fears, our questions and our vulnerabilities are ignored or battened down because they're too difficult for us to deal with. We hide them from ourselves, we hide them from other people, and we hide them from God, or at least we think we do. But God knows us better than we know ourselves, and God wants us to be able to trust him even with the things that we don't like or that disgust us and terrify us, because he knows us already, and he loves us despite the bits we think are unlovable. Perhaps if we saw lamentation as an act of faith, we would use it more regularly in our prayer times. It takes courage because it requires us to be honest. It takes faith because it requires us to trust that God will still love us. But as with any relationship, the more open and honest we can be, the richer and deeper and more precious it becomes. That's what God desires for each one of us as we journey through life and through Lent with Jesus.